Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. It's April 21st. It's been a pretty good week for me. I'm off on school vacation, so I've been doing bee work and catching up on homework because last week I took a trip to Memphis, the Memphis area, and looked at a lot of bees in different places. So it's been a good week for me. I did some inspections on Sunday. It wasn't supposed to be that warm, but it ended up being 60 degrees. So I got through all 14 of my hives. They're still alive, and I was really excited. I mean, I'd been waiting ever since October to start inspecting. I as soon as I close up the hives for the fall, I'm dying to get into them in the springtime. So I'm going to talk about swarms first. So here, where I live in Mid-Coast Maine, Woolwich, Maine, I don't think we see really any swarms at least till the first or second week of May. So I still have, 3-ish weeks till I'm really worried about swarming. And I'm not sure if it'll happen to me. Maybe I'll have a couple hives that will start queen cups, but I equalize everyone. So unless they just have an unusual disposition to swarm or they get ahead of me, which is entirely possible, I should be able to keep on top of them and hopefully not have any swarms. To this date, I haven't had a swarm. This is my sixth season. I've been beekeeping since 2018. So I'm pretty. I'm in my hives a lot. That's why I have had so few swarms. I think I might have had one or two, but none for sure. So swarms happen when one of two things happens. This is the way I like to describe swarming. So you get congestion swarming and you get honeybound swarming. So start with congestion swarming. So congestion swarming is what I would consider swarming before the honey flow. So if your bees are building up and they're running out of room in the boxes that they currently have, then I would say that's congestion swarming. Um, and congestion swarming is not really something first year beekeepers have to worry about. It's only beekeepers, in their second, third, fourth, fifth, however many years. So, the bees are running out of space. They're rapidly growing the brood nest. There's still, they're not like backfilling the brood nest with nectar. They're just adding tons of brood into the hive really fast and running out of boxes for the bees to be and running out of space for the queen to lay. And I haven't really had any congestion swarms to this point because I pretty aggressively equalize, so it's never really an issue. And so that solves congestion swarming most of the time. It's just equalizing a lot. I have had it's hard to count at this point. I guess 6 or 7 different attempts by hives to swarm, but that was all honeybound swarming. And honeybound swarming is entirely different than congestion swarming in my mind. Sometimes they can overlap, but mostly what I consider honeybound swarming is a hive during the honey flow, and there's so much nectar that they're just putting it into the brood nest. So like the spaces, a good queen will lay, maybe 80% of the frame with developing brood. So when you see that all capped, there's still a good amount of cells that have not been or just don't have any brood in them. So when a honeybound swarm, you will see all of those cells full of nectar. And those cells will be full of nectar. And then any bees that are hatching, you'll see them instantly backfill that with nectar. So that's honeybound swarming. And now that can definitely happen to new beekeepers. If like I get these really strong nukes from Swan's Honey in Albion, Maine. And several times when I've installed them, they've finished the first box, gotten into the second box, but the nectar flow is so strong in early June that they still end up making queen cells. And I have to pull out the queen and put her in a different box and make a split to stop the swarm from happening. Luckily, I've caught onto it every time because I check my bees pretty often, but that's where I've gotten close to losing swarms. So those are the two different types of swarming in my head. The way would explain it and how I internalize it. Honeybound swarming and congestion swarming. I don't really think there's anyone else who says it like this, but this is just the way I like to remember it. There's a comment from George here. He says, just checked out my 2 packages today, and they're both looking healthy. Nice day here in Connecticut. I haven't had a swarm either. It's my 5th season. Yeah, I'm not the only one not to have had a swarm yet, but for beekeepers of my tenure, 5 years in, most beekeepers will have had a swarm by then. I think it's mostly, well, for two reasons. Because one, I inspect my bees all the time, so it's pretty hard for a swarm to leave if you are always find the queen cells before they leave. And then two, I do a lot of splitting, and so if you're splitting hives, they're not going to be as strong, so they're just much less likely to swarm. So I think those are the two reasons why I haven't split. I'm glad your packages are doing well, George. Um, I wonder how warm it was in Connecticut. You can put that in the chat. How warm was it today? Here in Mid Coast, it was like, I think 52 and maybe decently windy, so probably like 48 or 49 with wind chill. But the bees were flying like crazy, and I think that would be because they are, much bigger, and so they have enough bees to keep the brood nest warm, but also send a bunch of foragers out to, pull in that nectar and pollen. It was just a swarm of bees today. I almost got stung though, because I like to walk up to my hives, within a few feet, and I got up there, and the bees started just they were normal. They didn't attack me or anything. And then I was walking away, and then there was a bee flying around my head, like bumping my neck and my hair, like many, many times. I walked, over 200 feet away from it until the bee left me. It took a really long time. It had every opportunity to sting me, but chose not to for whatever reason. It just really wanted me to leave. Um, and that's not the first time something like that has happened, but still, it's never fun. And so I have, two different places at my house that have bees. So I walked up to the other one and, kept my distance a little bit more because of that. So I got Grayson here. He's making great videos over on his channel. He hit, I think, 500 subscribers like a month ago, roughly. He made a video recently about honey supers. Go check that out. I think it's a 7-minute video. So, any questions about swarms, put them in the chat and I will go through them. I don't have a lot of personal experience, but I have a ton of secondhand experience from YouTube videos. So, pretty much anything anyone's ever said about swarms on YouTube, I've seen a lot of it and, absorbed a lot of that information. And who knows, maybe it'll be my first year and I actually get to catch a swarm. I've never got to yet. Never lost a swarm, I don't think, and I've never caught a swarm either. So, I don't know, I'm excited. Maybe it'll happen to me. Maybe I'm just doing too much splitting for that to happen. We'll see. That'd suck if my first swarm flies away and I don't get to catch it, but you just never know. So with swarming, I'm trying to think if there's anything else to really talk about. This is for most places in the Northeast, central US, the time of year where I'd see congestion swarms. Probably if you're, in Connecticut or parts of Massachusetts, that would be time to swarm. Grayson here. Have you ever caught a swarm in your own beehive? No, I have never caught my own swarm or anyone's swarm. So I've seen hundreds of people do it on YouTube, or well, not hundreds, but a lot. But I've never got the pleasure to do it myself. So I'm excited for when it finally does happen. It's my 6th beekeeping season. I started, 5 years ago. So, I'm hoping it happens somewhat soon. Okay, so swarming. I think that covers the basics of swarming. So I'm going to move on to the second part, which I have a little bit more detail on. So splits. So on Saturday, the 8th of April, I got to fly out to Alabama, and then my mom and I drove up to Memphis, the Memphis area, and I helped to make 322 splits in 3 days with 2 different beekeepers. So that was extremely exciting. I'll get back to this in a second. Grayson said, just caught a swarm a month ago, and that queen is laying. So good. It's a great pattern. Are you talking about the bucket swarm, Grayson? Is that what you're talking about? I think I did see that video. It's actually, I follow this person on Instagram. I think they live in Puerto Rico, and they're a beekeeper. And I think she has like all of her swarm traps are just buckets. And so she will put them in buckets and, let them make whatever comb and then transfer them into a normal hive like it's nothing. I don't know why she wouldn't have a different kind of swarm trap. I have seen it a little bit in the US, but mostly just on that specific Instagram. I think it's like Be Happy for Bees or something like that. They also post a lot of stuff about honey, so that's nice to see. Everyone enjoys some honey. So back to splits. So I got to go to Memphis last week and make a bunch of splits. So I was at Adair Honey Farm, and it was quite an experience. I got to work about 8.5 hours of beekeeping between Monday and Tuesday, 6 hours on Tuesday, 2.5 hours on Monday, and they'd probably gone through um, I don't know, maybe 60-ish colonies by the time I got there around 2 o'clock. And then I helped my buddy and I, Jacob, we went through the next 60 hives, and we, split them. So then on Tuesday, we split the last, I think it was like 200 or 300. We went through 300 hives in 2 days. Yeah, so it'd be like we did 180 more hives on Tuesday, which was really fun. I I wasn't as excited after Monday, but Tuesday was I really had a good time. I wore off all the rust of queen finding, and I found maybe I said 60 or 70% in my video. I'll link it below. It's about the splitting, but I think I found closer to 70 or 80% till the end of the day when the bees were just too riled up to really find the queen. But it was so fun, and I'm so thankful that they let me come down and do that. I had such a good time, and it was truly an experience. We harvested 493 frames of brood in 2 days. So they were going to make about 250 splits. About 80% of those queens will come back, so they'll get about 200 nukes out of that. And they're selling 200 nukes. I helped make roughly $37,000 in bees in those 2 days. So it was awesome. Here's Grayson. One I caught in a 5-gallon bucket. Weird, but hey, worth it. You get free bees and local bees. Yeah, it's free bees are free bees. If you don't have a specific breeding program, then I think free bees are very exciting. Even the idea of free bees is very exciting to me. So I can only imagine actually getting them. Here's Grayson. I've heard a lot about the Demery method for splitting. Never done it, but know how to do it. It works. Have you ever tried the Demery method? And if so, how did it turn out? So, good question, Grayson. I have never tried the Demery method. I watched there's like a 40 or 45-minute video from this beekeeper in, I want to say, Pennsylvania. And he demonstrated the Demery method. And so it's been a couple of years since I've looked at it all. So bear with me if I'm not got all the details correct. But from what I understand, you put all of the older brood in the upper box, and then you put an empty box of drawn comb on the bottom, and you put the queen in the bottom box with the drawn comb, and then the bees go down with her, and she lays all the eggs. And then once the frames of brood reach a certain age, you pull them up into the next box. And I think that's just a way of giving her the feeling of a lot of space. I think there might be a box in between, or the one that I watched, in between the box with the queen and a little bit of young brood, and then an empty box, and then the capped brood. I could be wrong. I can't remember exactly, but basically it's a way of making the hive feel like they have a lot of space, and just making sure they have a lot of drawn comb. And so I've never heard of it as a splitting method, but I just heard it as a swarm prevention method because you're giving her a lot of new space in the bottom because it's all drawn comb. And I'm sure it'd work. I would never do it otherwise than for a video. So I'm considering it. Probably not this year, but maybe in a couple of years I'll consider doing it. Just for a video. Why not? Can't hurt. I'm sure it works. It fits with how the bees decide, to swarm. Like I said, they swarm either because there's too much nectar, or because there's not enough space for brood. So, that could fix either of those problems. If you're giving them that much drawn comb, they're going to have plenty of space to put nectar. That's not even a question. And if it's because they're running out of space to put brood, well, you got a bunch of drawn combs in the bottom for her to fill up with brood. So it should be, I think that could definitely work. And I don't think I'll do it this year because I'm kind of short on colonies. I had one that went queenless, so I'm down to 13. But in future years, I would definitely be interested in trying that and just showing it in video to see what it's like and show people what it is. So I will eventually do some research, probably not anytime soon, but maybe in the future about that. So back to back to the splitting in Memphis. So I helped harvest 493 frames of brood in 2 days. And, eventually those will turn into $37,000 in nukes. So it was pretty awesome. Um, yeah, I'm just really thankful I got to go. I'll link the video in the description. I think it's like called Splitting Quickly and Easily. It it it's like a 14-minute video, and my friend Jacob, he is hilarious. If you watch that video, you're gonna laugh because he's so funny. Um, he's got that southern twang, and I think a lot of people would enjoy seeing that video. And then on Wednesday, I woke up I think like 6 a.m. and I drove over to West Memphis to keep bees with Gus Mitchell, Crane's Nest, Crane's Nest honey, I think, yeah. And he I helped him make 77 splits on Tuesday. So he had 4 yards, and we did. He had already done the splitting a few days ago, like I did at the Adaires. So I should have explained what I did at the Adaires. But what we would do is we'd go through a colony. Most of them had two deeps, one that was added on a few weeks ago, so most of the hives weren't even up there yet. Then we'd go into the bottom, we'd look through every frame, and we'd leave ideally like at least two good frames of capped brood, ideally like three, and some just like three frames of brood in general, mostly. Ideal if it was capped. But then we'd pull up any more than three frames of brood, we would shake off the bees, and then we would put it into the other box. And then if they had any frames of food, we would take them away right away because they were going to go back and feed a few days after, so they wouldn't be at any risk of starving. And we needed any frames of food that we could get to feed the splits. So even if it didn't have that much, anything was good enough. So what we did was we went through, found our, anything over three frames of brood, took it out, and we put it in the other box that the bees hadn't really gone into yet. Shook off all the bees, then found any food frames, shook off all the bees. Then we put back, if there were drawn bees or drawn frames of comb in the top box, we'd put those back down. If there were foundations, we'd also pull those back down. We'd, get the box back out to 8 plus an internal feeder. Then we'd put on a queen excluder and then put the box with excess frames of brood and any food frames over the queen excluder. And since we shook them all off before we put them in that box, we knew that there was no queen on there. So then they were going to come back. I don't know how long they were going to wait. I think only like 2 or 3 days. They're going to wait for the bees to come up onto those frames and cluster around them again. And then they could pull off all the splits while knowing that there's no chance the queen would be in that box. So that's the reason why they did it that way. And the other reason they did it that way is so they knew they would not have to find the queen. There's no reason to find the queen. We shook off all the bees. So all the bees that are coming back up onto those frames will be the bees, worker bees, because the queen won't be able to get through the queen excluder. So I probably personally split like 60 hives or more in those 8 hours. Like on video, I did it in, I want to say like 10 minutes. And I think that was like the biggest hive that I dealt with the entire year, the entire day. And it was the most work. Just, I had to do more manipulation. And that only took 10 minutes and I was on video. So I think that I was probably going, I don't know, 6 or 7 minutes per hive to do the splitting. So it was really fast and it was really fun too. And if you found the queen, then you wouldn't have to do any shaking, which is nice. And I found the queen in a lot of them. Jacob and I would, like, hey, want to see this queen? We'd show each other the queens a bunch of times because they're beautiful. I love seeing them. It was so fun to find all the queens that I could. Wasn't necessary, but if I was going through the hive, I'd see her most of the time. So that was really fun. And then, back to Wednesday when I went to West Memphis to work with bees with Gus Mitchell, he had already done all the same splitting that we did on Monday and Tuesday at his apiaries. So he had split all of his hives, or not all of his hives. He'd split 4 apiaries. He gone through all of them. And so we pulled off 77 splits between we probably got to his first apiary at 7:20 and we finished at like 2:00 ish. And so it was like 6 hours, but 2 hours of his driving because they're pretty far apart. But, we just went through, We would show up to an apiary. We would pull off any of those brood frames and honey frames above the excluder. He didn't have almost any food frames, which was unfortunate. Some of them are going to be a lot bigger because some of them got 3 frames of brood instead of 2 frames of brood and a food like the Adares wanted to do it. So, 3 frames of calf brood is the equivalent of 7.5 frames of future bees when that hatches, roughly, which is like 30,000 bees. So some of the he said he was going to equalize because some of them are going to be absolutely packed out so quick, and others are going to be way farther behind. He said he was going to equalize. So we go into an apiary, we put them into the Jester white nuke boxes. Then once we'd done that, we'd close them up, put them on his truck, drive to the next apiary, drop them out at the edge of the apiary, and then we'd go into each one and add a queen cell. And once we added the queen cell, he would tape the lid just to make sure it couldn't blow off. And then we were done with those bees. Then we'd go through the bees that were actually at that apiary, pull off those splits, go to the next yard. We did that for 4 yards, and then we dropped the last round of splits at the first apiary that we started. So 4 different yards had the splits in them. And so by the end of the day, we did 77 splits. And yeah, it took about probably 4 hours of bee work, 2 hours of driving, and I just had a great time. It was awesome. I can't thank him enough for letting me come out and do all that. I really had a great time. That video is not coming out yet. I had the splitting video at the Adares that came out on Tuesday. I got another video tomorrow at 10 a.m. I should be in the chat while it's live. It's premiering at 10 a.m. And that video is a honey house tour. The Adares, they harvest 75,000 pounds of honey per year on average. So it's just unbelievable how much honey that is. Anyways, so I walked through their warehouse with Jacob in their bottling room, and it's just awesome. I mean, it's great to see. Like, I really doubt I will ever reach that scale, just because I don't ever see myself, hiring employees, and that's how I would have to hire multiple people to get to that size. But it was just very cool to see. They have a 120 frame extractor, which is just crazy. I mean, that's enormous. So I was really impressed to see their whole operation. That video is coming out tomorrow. It's like 7 minutes and 4 seconds or something like that. Jacob's a great buddy, and I can't thank him enough for letting me come out and see all that. And then next Tuesday, I'm going to have the video where Gus and I are pulling off the splits. It's going to be probably 6 minutes or something. I had to do a voiceover, or I'm going to have to do a voiceover when editing because you could not hear me at all in the clip that I did. But Gus has a quieter voice than I do, and you could actually hear him in his clip for whatever reason. So it is what it is, but I can't explain it. All right, here, question. Been busy today. Yesterday, getting supers on the hives. Our honey flow, so much pollen and nectar. The honey, how much honey are you looking to get off your hives this year, Rainier? That is a good question, Grayson. So my goal is 300 pounds, and I'm only going to have probably 6 production hives this year, and I have like 7 drawn supers. So everyone's going to get a queen excluder and a honey super when I put them on, which is probably only about 3 weeks in the future when I'll put on supers. And so I hope to get about two supers of honey. I figure they'll be able to draw 1 super out and fill up 1 super that I already gave them. So that's 60 pounds per hive, 6 hives. It's about 360 pounds of honey. So that's what I'm hoping for. Will it happen? You never know. We'll see. I hope so, but you just never know. It's beekeeping. I don't know. Fickle is not the right word, but just there's an extreme amount of variance every year, every day. It's just impossible to know. So my goal is 300. But I do have 25 honey supers with frames. So in a perfect world, theoretically, I could harvest about 750 pounds of honey. So, do I hope that happens? Sure, but it's probably not a great chance that's going to happen. I mean, I would have to buy a lot of buckets because that's like it's about 60 pounds per bucket. So that's like 13 buckets, not quite like 12 and a half buckets of honey. So, who knows? Maybe that happens. That's probably way too much honey. And that would be kind of torture to extract that much honey. I think that would be very not fun. But I'd get it done because, need that honey money. So, yep. I'm looking for 5 gallon buckets. Is it possible? I'm looking 4 or 5, 5 gallon buckets of honey. Is it possible? But I don't know yet. Yeah. You never know till it's in the jar. That's kind of how, or a bucket, I guess, in your case. So you're hoping for 300 pounds. Is that right, Grayson? Yeah, I found that almost to the pound, it's about 60 pounds of honey per bucket. It's about 12 pounds. 1 gallon of honey is 12 pounds, weighs 12 pounds. And yeah, last year I did 232 pounds. So it was just over about, just under 4 buckets of honey. So, I mean, it was a lot of honey. And I have about high 50s, low 60s left. I have honey now at Bath Natural Market. I'm taking in some to replenish their stock. And then I have it at Morning Glory in Brunswick, Maine. And then I'm trying to get into the store, Treats in Wiscasset, Maine. Hopefully I'll get it there. And then my grandparents' farm stand will open up in June, and I don't know if I'll still have honey left in June. We'll see, but maybe. Yep, looking for 300 pounds or more. We will see. How many production hives do you have, Grayson? Because 300 pounds. Yeah, I mean, you guys get really good honey flows in Southern Alabama. I don't think I can hold a candle to that. They're so long there compared to here. Like I get on a good year, maybe 7 or 8 weeks of flow, but average would be like 6 weeks or 5 weeks of flow. And so there's a beekeeper that's also a teacher at my high school, and she says that the bees in our area can, if the super is drawn, they can fill it up and cap it in about a week. So let's say best case scenario that they're doing that. Max, even if I had all drawn comb, would be like 180 pounds. So, maybe crazier things have happened, but I just don't have even close to the drawn comb. I mean, it'd be ideal if I could get, 15 drawn supers, but, um, 10 would be all right. I try to set realistic goals, and I feel like 10 could definitely happen. All right. So I got to make a bunch of splits in other places, but for as far as my own splitting goes, this is my current plan. So my goal is to graft on not March, but May 13th. And so my virgins from Corey Stevens are coming. I have 4 virgins ordered for myself, and then 24. I think the whole order was 28 virgin queens, which is crazy. Anyways, so the I'm going to graft on the 13th, hopefully, if the drones are there. I'm only going to graft if I think there's enough drones available in the area. But if there is, or if there are enough drones, my plan is to graft on the 13th. I will pull the cells on the 23rd, and probably in the day, maybe 5 days before, or maybe starting even maybe 7 to 10 days before I split. So like between the 13th and the 23rd, I'm going to be pulling splits. So all my production colonies, my plan is to pull out 2 frames of brood. And what I'm going to do is pull those 2 frames of brood out and then add 2 drawn combs back in. So those 6 hives will get me 12 frames of capped brood. That's my plan for them. Then and I have a lot of honey frames, so I don't need any honey frames from hives. I've got probably 30 or 40 honey frames, so a lot of honey. Anyway, so I'm going to go through those hives. I'm going to pull off my 2 frames of brood from my production colonies, drop in drawn combs, and they'll already have supers by then, but if they don't, definitely add supers. Then my splitting hives, I'm going to have 7 hives purely dedicated to pulling honey from them. So I'm going to be adding, 7 7 hives for just brood production. So I'm just going to be pulling brood out of them the whole year. Um, my plan is to pull 4 frames of brood out of those hives. And those those 7 hives pull out 4 frames of brood each. That's about 28 frames of brood, plus the 12 from my other 6 production colonies. So it's about 40 frames of brood that I'm going to start with. Each mating nuke is going to get 1 frame of brood in the queen castles. I have 3 by 3 by 3 queen castles. And so that's enough for, 21 queen castles. And then I want to make um, a bunch more nukes as well. So if I have 19 frames of brood, that's roughly 9 nukes. So I'll make 21 queen castle mating nukes, as well as 9 5-frame mating nukes with 2 frames of brood, 1 frame of food. And so those will be made up hopefully on the 23rd, assuming there are enough drones. I keep saying that, but beekeepers get caught all the time, especially commercial guys. Not bagging on them. It's just, they want to make as much money as possible with their bees, as do I. But they end up grafting before there's enough drones and before they're sexually mature. Drones, it takes 10 or 12 days after they hatch um, for them to be sexually mature and be in prime position to mate with queens. So not only do you have to have a lot amount of drones hatching, you got to have 10 or 12 days pass before you want to be sending out your queens. So my queens will go out on their mating flights. If I make them on the 23rd, they'll hatch on like the 24th or the 25th of May. And I heard they stay in the hive for a few days, so probably like the 28th of May, they will be out mating with drones. So I got to have bucket loads full of drones by the 16th of May. That would be roughly the time, like walking around in the hives. And then they have, their 12 days to get ready to be the best they possibly can be and go mate. And I want to have as many queens that are mated with as many drones as possible. It's really important for healthy queens, and I only want to sell the absolute best queens. So I'll have queens for sale. Probably, if the 13th the date rings true, I like to wait 20 days after I drop them in. So that's like, not very good at math here. 8, 12. So June 12th, yeah. So I'd like to pull all my queens on like June 12th. And those will be $45 unmarked, 50 marked, and I'm kind of moving towards a carniolan. Doesn't mean they're all going to be jet black, but I'm moving my bees towards a more carniolan strain. There you go. Here's Grayson again. I have 5 production hives that have queens and 4 that are still nukes and don't have mated queens yet. So you're hoping for, what did that be, like a super and a half per colony? Is that right, Grayson? 45 pounds per hive, 5 hives. Yeah, that's like 200 something pounds. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of honey, man. I don't know how you're gonna sell all that honey. I hope you're able to. I I harvested 230 pounds last year, and I'm still not quite done selling it. I'm relatively close. To be real, I didn't really try super hard to sell it this winter in stores. In this spring, I needed money to buy equipment, so I've been pushing it out a little harder. But it's, there's a pretty good amount of honey market untapped here, and I'm still having a little trouble getting rid of, my last 60 pounds or so. But I've sold, 50 pounds in the last 2 months. So it's been going pretty well for me. So that's my split plan. Another part of the splitting is I want to absolutely make sure, like, that I'm treating for mites well. So my plan currently is I did a video on this. It didn't do that well, but it's like, you're going to do what with drones? Dot dot dot. I'll link it in the description. It's all about Zach Lamas's new research. I mean, it was eye opening to say the least. If you haven't seen anything about it, you can check out my video. It's like 10 minutes. There's 2 interviews, one with Frederick Dunn and the other one on SGMI Media. And I could not recommend more seeing either of those. They're about an hour each, but well worth it. Maybe some of the most important content that I will see this entire year. So so helpful, and I don't know, just really explained a lot of things that I see in the hive. Like as beekeepers, we observe a lot that's going on in our hives, and I feel like a relatively small amount of that we are actually able to understand. Like there are some things that we will never understand as much as we want to, as much as we try to. But getting answers and connecting the dots from his research to what I see in my hives, I don't know. It's an awesome feeling, and I think it's going to be very valuable research. And I'll give a quick synopsis of it here. The so when we do mite tests, so if you take 300 bees and you put them in a Dawn wash or an alcohol wash and you try to wash the mites off them, what happens often is in the early spring, you get zeros across the board, meaning there are no mites. As beekeepers, we know in our head that there are some mites. There's just a very, very small amount in this hive, and that could be the case. But drones prefer, or mites prefer drone brood over worker brood, 60 to 1. So in the springtime, we got a lot of drones. The bees want to reproduce. They know they need the drones to mate with the new queens. So they make a lot of drones. And so the mites highly prefer the drones to the queen, or the drones to the worker brood. So when they're going after those drones, they also the groundbreaking part of his research is that they actually like being on adult drones too, which is really unusual. You wouldn't think that. But what he found, two things overwhelmingly. One, the bees, they love, or the mites, they love being on young bees. So they will constantly jump from bee to bee to be on the young bees. So they love being on the bees 1 to 3 days old, or it's like 2 to 3 days old, something like that. So they will constantly be jumping onto the bees that are young. And two, they much prefer jumping onto drones rather than nurse bees, which you would think is counterproductive considering the nurse bees are the ones that are their ticket back into the brood. But for whatever reason, they really like being on the drones. And so the drones provide a shield for the colony. The mites do all their damage to the drones, and which could be detrimental to the colony in the sense that it might reproduce less because less of those drones are able to mate with new queens. But you don't see any issues with anything inside the hive. The workers are doing really well. The drones, there's a lot of them, so they're able to bear the brunt of the parasite load. So you'll roll 0 0 0s. Then once the bees stop making drones because the honey flows over, the all the parasitic load jumps onto the honeybees, the worker bees in the hive. And so when that happens, it's like a huge crash. So the population, it's already crashing like this. So add on to that the huge burden of the viruses from the mites, the colony just starts absolutely crashing because there are no drones to protect them from the parasites, the mites. They're injecting tons of lethal viruses into the bees. And so once that happens, the bees are just crashing so fast. So you could go from testing a zero, like for me, I could be testing a zero in early July. 2 weeks later, they're not making drones anymore. And my bees are testing a 14, an 18. I'll see jumps like that. I saw a hive that was I want to say like a 3. And then in like 2 or 3 weeks later, they were like an 11 or something like that. So like 3 times growth in a few weeks. And so it's because of the drones. And so what I'm doing to counteract this year, while that's good information, you might wonder, why does it matter if our testing method may be flawed in the spring, but there's nothing we can do about it. And Zach's answer to that is test your drones for mites. So I would do this in May, but I don't want to destroy any drones that I have for my early queens. But by early June, I should have way too many drones. I'll be perfectly fine on the drone front. So what I'll do is I'll go through each hive. I'll pick out 40 drones and I'll put them in alcohol or Dawn or whatever you use to do your washes, and I will shake them. And he doesn't have economic thresholds, meaning a threshold that makes sense to treat. He's trying to develop that. There are lots of people doing it all over the country and sending information back to him so he can figure that out. But for me, it's pretty simple. If I have 10 hives that test twos, threes, and fours, and then I've got, the other three hives are testing 14, 19, and 26, well, then it's a pretty easy decision. Obviously, they have a lot more mites than the other hives, so I will go ahead and treat them. So this is my way of early detecting the mite populations in my hives before they become a massive issue. So I think this is really the key to early detection, and that could potentially save a hive or severely make it a lot stronger for the next winter if they don't have those viruses persisting in the colony. So I'm definitely going to do that. I think I'll do it the first week or two of June. I mean, I can't guarantee that I'll film it and put it on YouTube, but there's a high probability that I'll make a video while doing that. And I just think it'll be really important and practice I would see myself doing in the future. Now, I wouldn't try to do that in like late July or early August when the bees aren't making drones, because so if you see a drone on the outside frame, no, don't use that at all. You only want the drones that have just hatched. So they're all fuzzy and they're in the center of the brood nest. And so those are the ones that are going to be able to tell you whether they have mites or not. The ones on the outside of the brood nest, there's never going to be any mites on there. They're just never going to have mites because all the mites have migrated to the younger drones and younger worker bees. So you only want to test them that are right in the middle of the brood nest. And so I'm going to be doing just that. And I should have 40 drones in the middle of the brood nest at that time of year. So I'm really excited about this. I think it'll be really interesting and helpful. And I'm excited for Zach. I don't know if he's continuing this research, but I think he's going to figure out the thresholds regardless. So I think that's going to be a huge advantage. And I'll do normal alcohol washes in late July or early August. And my guess is those drone colonies will be great predictors of future high mite loads. So before I move on to the third topic, queen rearing, I wanted to show this video. I took it while I was in the hives at the Adares. I think it was on Tuesday. I'd never seen this before. It's fascinating to me. So I don't think I can pause it. But you can see right in the middle of the screen, there's a yellow blob. And that yellow blob is actually propolis, or well, not propolis yet. So it's tree sap. And the bees, they have, the Russian bees really like propolis. So what the bees do to make propolis is they go out on trees and they start, and they pull the sap off the tree. They bring it back to the hive, and then it takes a bunch of workers, as seen in this video, to pull the propolis off the bee because it's so ridiculously sticky that it takes 5, 6, 7, 8 bees to try to pull it off of her. And so I've never seen yellow propolis before, also, which I thought was cool. And I don't know, I've just never seen this. I thought it was fascinating how the bees are taking it off. And I don't know, most bees don't forage for propolis till later in the year, but these Russians, they love their propolis. So they were even looking for propolis in, I don't know, it was like second week of April. Anyway, so I thought that was really cool. And I've never seen it in my own hives. So I don't know, I just want to show that video. It's in my how to make splits quickly and easily. I'll link that's linked down below. So the third topic here, queen rearing, I've already touched on it. My goal is to graft on the 13th, and I pull my cells 10 days after I graft. So my goal is to pull off all my cells on the 23rd of May and put them into my mating nukes. So this is what I'm hoping to do. Will it happen? All depends on the drones. If I think I have enough drones, then I'll go ahead and do it. Another good sign to figure out when I should start grafting is if I start to see my first colonies starting to swarm, then that's a very good indication that it's okay for me to graft, because that's probably even 10 days after I need to. So I'll definitely consider just going ahead and doing that and grafting. So my goal this year is I've not had great success with grafting queens in past years. I've made a fair amount of queens, but they haven't been not the quality of the queens hasn't been bad, but the quality of the queen cells is not where I want it to be. They're not as fat as I want them to be, and I don't get as many accepted as I really like there to be. So my new goal or my new plan this year is on May 3rd, which is like a week and a half away. I'm going to take the colony that I'm doing the queen ring out of. I'm going to go into the brood nest. I'm going to take the top box. Both boxes should be pretty much full of brood at that point. I'm going to pull out all the frames of capped brood in the hive, move them into the top box. Then I'm going to pull all the frames of eggs and larvae into the bottom box. And then if I don't have 10 frames or yeah, probably 10 frames of capped brood, what I'll do is I'll go into other hives and I will exchange the frames of larvae and eggs into the other hives, and I'll pull out frames of capped brood into that hive. I'll do this on May 3rd. So then I have at least a full frame of capped brood, or a full box full of only capped brood. The bottom box is mostly eggs and larvae. And then I'm going to put the queen in the box with all the capped brood and put a queen excluder on. And what this will do is I'll give the hive 10 days. In 10 days, so capped brood is capped at day 10 or 9.5, something like that. So what will happen between day 9.5 and day 21 is almost every single cell will hatch on that frame. Nearly all that capped brood will hatch. So 10 frames of capped brood, that's the equivalent of like 100,000 bees hatching, roughly. It won't be completely full. So let's just say 80,000 bees hatching. That is an insane amount in 10 days. And so all those bees will, or not all of them, but most of them will be turning into, nurse bees to take care of my queen cells. And so I will have an infinite amount of queen cells or infinite amount of bees to make my new queen cells. So when I'm doing that, my plan is I'll put the queen in the box with all the capped brood. As it hatches, she can lay back into it. That's okay. Then the other box is going to have eggs and larvae. I'm going to put a queen excluder between the boxes, and then all the brood in the bottom, or yeah, all the brood with the larvae and the eggs, that will start to age out. So in 10 days, all the brood will be capped, so they won't be able to make any queen cells from anything in the box below. And so what I'll do is the lower box with after 10 days, because of the queen excluder, will be only capped brood. So I will pull that off on May 13th, and I will put it on a different bottom board. I will add one frame of larvae to the middle of the box, and I will add pollen patty and sugar water. Then 24 hours later, I'll go back in. The bees will have started queen cells on the frame of larvae. So I will destroy all the queen cells on that frame of larvae, put it back into the queen right portion, and then that will be a queenless box that knows they're queenless, has an infinite amount of nurse bees in there, and they will have the food in the hive. So I'll make sure they have a full frame of pollen. There'll be some nectar or honey in there as well, and then I will graft into that. And so those bees will have so many, or they'll just have so many nurse bees in that hive. They'll have pollen patty, sugar water, plus frames of pollen and honey inside the hive. So I'm creating the perfect environment for those queen cells to thrive. And I did the math, and I need like 30 or 31 queen cells for myself and probably 4 or 5 more to sell. So that's like 36 queen cells. So I'll probably graft 60. And hopefully this time I'm actually good at grafting and I don't do terribly. And I'll get, hopefully like maybe 40, 42, something like that. Though then by the end of the grafting, I'll have, roughly 35 or 36 because they don't finish them all. And those 36 cells will then be split up into mating nukes on the 23rd of May. And I will be selling queens on the 12th of June. 20 days later after that is the I can't remember how many days are in June, but roughly, the first week of July and then the last week of July, I will also have queens available. $45 $45 unmarked, $50 marked. If you're interested in queen cells, they are $14 each, I think, or $16. I can't remember. It's in my Instagram bio if you want to look there. Just email me with any questions about prices or interest in them, and I can reserve a queen for you. So that's my plan for queen rearing. And it's not that I haven't had success. I have made a lot of queens, like probably close to 100 in the past few years, but not to the level that I want to, in the sense that I don't get high acceptance most of the time, and I haven't had as fat, big, long queen cells as I wanted. And so I really think that this new method of stacking the top box full of capped brood will fix that issue. It shouldn't be major. I think it should be a major change, and I don't know. I'm really excited. Hopefully I can post pictures on my Instagram and in the community tab about just beautiful bars of queen cells. That's the hope, and we'll see if it happens. I'm not too sure at this point. If there's any questions or anything, just put it in the chat and I will talk about it. I've pretty much covered the three topics. Gonna wrap in about 10 minutes. Um, but yeah, so I have the video coming out at 10 a.m. tomorrow. How to it's quitting. It was touring a honey house and bottling room. Then Tuesday I'll have a video about pulling off splits with Gus Mitchell in the Arkansas area, the West Memphis, Arkansas area. Then next Saturday, I'm switching to Tuesday, Saturday uploads. Next Saturday, I'm going to be posting a video about my first inspections. I think I'll be able to make 2 videos out of that. I have over an hour of filming. I'm definitely going to cut a lot of that out. It's going to be about equalizing. I equalized 2 hives. I was pretty stressed. It was 35 degrees. It's 35 tonight, and I think it was 35 yesterday and 36 the night before. So it's getting pretty cold at night. So I was feeling nervous that I was feeling not very confident about what I did. Because even though I do know the principles of how to equalize, takes one small mistake and you might kill an entire frame of brood. So, killing 10,000 future bees plus, that's not good. Anyway, so I quickly peeked in and checked the frames of brood that I equalized into the smaller hives, and they're hatching. There's tons of baby bees, no dead brood. What a relief. They looked great. I'll get that on video. That was last Sunday. It was a fun day to inspect, but I'll make a video about equalizing probably. And then just some other hive inspections on this. This is way out in the future, but not Tuesday this week, but Tuesday next week. So that's my current plan for uploads. My current plans for inspections, I'm hoping to get into my hives not this weekend, but the next. That'll be about 2 weeks from my last inspection. I'm going to go through all my hives. And I haven't decided how many frames of brood I want them to have, but I think I wanted everyone to have 3 to 4 frames of brood last Sunday. That was my goal for everyone. I didn't have quite enough brood yet, but next time I should be able to equalize them all out to the same size. So I'll probably be looking for first week of May, like around the 1st of May. I'll be looking for probably 5 to 6 frames of brood. That would be probably what I'll decide on. And so any hives, this hive's got 8, this hive's got 3. Bam, I'm switching. So now, one's got 6, one's got 5. So when you're equalizing, I'll go over this in the video, but the most important thing is that you're picking capped brood, and especially emerging brood if you can. That is the key to successfully equalizing, because the brood that is emerging, that's almost that's going to heat itself almost instantly. So those bees will hatch, and then they'll be able to heat the brood that hasn't hatched yet. The other bees that haven't hatched yet, the capped brood. So find those frames of emerging brood and put them into your smaller hive. And then I would take all the frames that are all the adhering bees to the frame that you pulled over with cap brood. And then also I would shake in 1 or 2 more frames from your big colony just to absolutely make sure that they are, they're going to have enough bees to heat it. So it can be nerve wracking, especially if the nights are cold, but boy, does it make a big difference when all your hives are the same. And I know that my hives aren't going to swarm, or there's a high probability they won't swarm if I keep them roughly all at the same size. I think 3 or 4 frames of brood on April 16th is going to turn into them not swarming before April 23rd when I split them. Every hive's going to get some amount of split. My brood production colonies will get split a lot more. Anyway, so that's my goal when equalizing. And when you have to find the queen to do it, obviously, because In early or in late April, it's really bad if you lose a queen because you switch her into the wrong box, because you can't really get queens. I mean, I guess you could order them from the south, but it's just not an ideal time to lose a queen. So find that queen, bring over the frame of emerging brood, go back into the big hive, find one or two frames that have larvae on them, because those larvae need to be fed like every 40 to 60 minutes. And so because of that, they're going to be the nurse bees on those frames. Shake those frames of larvae in, and probably the adhering bees to the cat brood frame plus one or two frames. I'd just be safe with two frames of shook brood, and that will give you the best chance to equalize those hives without damaging any brood. I didn't this week. I actually haven't in the past, but it was just a huge realization. I really like this beekeeper, lives in Hamden, Maine. It's called his name's Peter Cowan. His channel is called Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer, and he's the one who he didn't introduce the idea, but he gave a very specific colony, like detailed guide to it for my area. He lives, about an hour from me in Hamden, and it just makes a huge difference. Like I've had colonies that they overwintered, but they had like a frame of bees in May or April, and it's nothing wrong with the queen or anything. It's just they started out so small, so they just never built up. And so by equalizing, you never have that issue. And you stop your huge ones from swarming and you get your small ones to the right size to be able to split or make honey or whatever you want to do with them. Equalizing is a game changer. I think I'm about to wrap. If there's any questions, put them in the chat. I can answer them before we end here in the next few minutes. But yeah, equalizing, it's very important, and not everyone does it, but I think that a lot of people who don't probably could benefit from it. So yeah, I equalized to 3 or 4 frames of brood on Sunday, April 16th, and my goal on around the 1st, 2nd, 3rd of May, I'll go in again, and I'll equalize them to 5 to 6 frames of brood in general. So we'll wrap after this question. So what queen genetics are you looking for this year, Rainier? So it's a great question. I am doing some work with that. So on May 23rd, my order of virgin queens from Corey Stevens is coming. He's shipping them out on the 22nd. It's overnight shipping. So I'll have those 4 virgin queens at my hives. And I want to make sure that by the end of the year, they're in hives that hopefully are very strong to make sure they make it over the winter. And 2, that have green drone frames so they can produce lots of drones for me next year. So I'm working that way. I'm looking for a more carniolan influence, so I want them to be much more frugal. So I want them to shut down brood rearing or a lot more when the flow is over and there's more of a scarcity of resources, and I can get them back going again with artificial feed. And then my other goal for them is to less food, and just to make sure that they really explode during the springtime when the first pollen hits. That should be their sign. It's go time. Let's hit it. So I'm working towards the carniolan stock, and then incorporating the Corey VSH stock via all those queens. Doesn't matter what they mate with, all the drones they make, because drones are haploid and only have I think 12 chromosomes. They will make all VSH drones to mate with my future queens. And so they'll have higher mite tolerance, and I'll have to treat less for mites and just less damage from mites in general. And the other part of this is I'm buying 6 Russian queens this year as well. So they are known because they deal with mite viruses a lot better, and they suppress mite viruses a lot better as well. And then so I'm buying them from Warren Colors Apiary in I can't remember what part of Massachusetts, but it's about 3 hours from my house. So I'm going to buy 6 queens from Dan Conlin at Warren Colors Apiaries, and I'm just curious to try them out. My buddy Mike Zatek, he loves Russians, and so I need to give them a go. All the Gus and the Adaires, they only have Russians, and they only treat once a year, and their brood cycle is much longer than me. So obviously they have extreme mite resistance compared to average commercial stock. So And then I said this last time, but really I'm going to wrap on this question. How many queens are you looking to sell this year, Rainier? Thanks for the question, Grayson. I am looking to sell 40. So if I do my math correctly, I should send out 113 queens in their mating flight. If I get 80% mating, I should get back 89 queens. I want to sell 40. I want to keep 27. So that gets me up to 67 queens. So I should have 22 in excess, but that's kind of my margin of error because nothing ever goes perfect with mating nukes. They're such a pain in the butt, but hopefully they get me, they produce a good amount of mated queens. So I'll have 22, a margin of error of like 22 queens. So I want to sell 40. Thank you to Grayson and everyone else who showed up tonight. I enjoyed just talking. Next week, I'll have Ashby Miller on. Can't wait to talk with him. He always keeps it real, tells you how, the reality of how hard commercial beekeeping can be at times for him. And I think he'll be a great guest, and I can't wait to see you guys. I can't remember if we agreed on 7 or 8 p.m. I think, yeah, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. next Friday, April 28th. See you then, and see you in my video premiere tomorrow at 10 a.m. Hope you have a good night. Bye.